To watch my exclusive content not featured anywhere on YouTube, log on to my website at imjustheretomakeyouthink.com/films. In today's society of America, many people have claimed the year 2020 as a year for the history books, being as though some have vastly referred to these publicized events that have occurred throughout the year so far as signs indicating that the end of time is approaching. But if the saying goes that time waits for no man or no one, and time is commonly measured and displayed as an everlasting occurrence, then it can only make sense that time is based strictly on one's perception, meaning that it's all on your mindset for what and how you make things out to be. This is why you will find many social distractions being heavily promoted and showcased all across the internet, just to take your time away from you, or psychologically speaking, designed to take your mind away from you. Over the past 5 years, a complex topic of discussion arose where so-called Black people began discovering and publicly acknowledging just how much America's educational curriculums and supporting materials have all lied to them concerning their true history and identity. For example, Donald Trump was just recently interviewed about his take on protesters tearing down particular statues that represent some of America's deep, dark history that many people have mixed feelings about.
We're in a war on history. They want to take Jackson statue out of New Orleans without Battle of New Orleans. We're not the same country.
I don't like it at all. I don't like it at all. I don't like anything that's going on. Now, federal, I've stopped. I've stopped federal. But the states are, a lot of states are weak. A lot of people are weak, and they're allowing it to happen. Hey, it's going over a little bit around the world now. They want to remove the statue of Gandhi, okay? All he wanted was peace. They want to take down Ulysses S. Grant. Well, he's the one that stopped the Confederates, right? So, you know, he was a great general. Nobody's stock went higher than his stock over the last 10 or 15 years.
But do you understand how you look at Thomas Jefferson, you look at George Washington, you look at James Monroe, look at James Madison? One thing they were brilliant. They also had slaves.
Yeah.
So how do we grow as a country, but yet not forget our past?
So you have to understand history, and you have to understand the culture and so many other aspects of our country. And people can study that and they can hate it, and let's all hate it. But you can't take down George Washington's statue, and half of our country is named after Washington. You can't. We have to remember the heritage, the culture of our country. And you know, this is less important, but it's very important. Some of the things that they're trying to destroy are magnificent pieces of art. Have you ever seen an area where a statue was removed and you look at the area and they put blacktop over the top of it, they put asphalt over the top, and that's the end? And it was the center of a town or a village, and now the statue's gone, and the whole village is like a different place. And here's the other problem I have. A lot of these people that want it down don't even know what they're taking down. I watch them on television, and I see what's happening, and they're ripping down things. They have no idea what they're ripping down. But they started off with the Confederate, and then they go to Ulysses S. Grant, well, what's that all about? And they would knock down Lincoln. There's a group that wants to take down Lincoln. They haven't figured out exactly why yet. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. I've stopped them twice now from going over to the Jefferson Memorial. If I weren't president, they would have knocked down. If a guy like Biden was president, they will knock down the Jefferson Memorial. Not going to happen.
Francis Scott Key, the latest writer of the national anthem.
He wrote the national anthem.
And then Trump was asked about so-called African Americans that do support him, but strongly disagrees with continuing to allow for racial problematic figures to stay displayed and commemorated as prominent historical monuments in America. And this was his response.
Since you have done a lot for the African American community, what is your message to them who said my ancestors were enslaved because of their...
My message is that we have a great country. We have the greatest country on earth. We have a heritage, we have a history, and we should learn from the history. And if you don't understand your history, you will go back to it again. You will go right back to it. You have to learn. Think of it. You take away that whole era, and you're going to go back to it sometime. People won't know about it. They're going to forget about it. It's okay.
And he's right about learning and knowing your history, because if you don't, then history is more liable to repeat itself. However, is it really okay for us to continue to allow strangers to religiously tell our stories their way, uncritically, since we the people didn't have any input or say-so at all ever since the creation of this conceptual indoctrinated information became known as American history? And did you notice how the blame for tearing down the monuments was easily placed upon the protesters, but then slickly changed to immediately single out a set group of people?
Their officer showed no remorse while watching my uncle's soul leave his body. He begged and pleaded many times just for you to get up, but you just pushed harder. Why must this system be corrupt and broken? Laws were already put in place for the African American system to fail. And these laws need to be changed. No more hate crimes, please. Someone said, make America great again. But when has America ever been great?
The ugly side to this truth is that we are witnessing a reality where the blame is being constantly placed upon the victims. But coincidentally, or purposely, that's only if the victims are various shades of the color brown in skin complexion. Obviously, this type of discussion is needed in order to promote a systematic positive change concerning racial inequality, simply because not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. James Baldwin. Which is why it is critically important to know your true history and who you really are, versus regurgitating what you were taught about your history and identity throughout compulsory educational school curriculums that was created and cultivated by complete strangers. For example, our people have become accustomed to referring to themselves as African Americans and or Black people, without any room for questioning its accuracy or validity on whether or not it's even truthful to begin with. Not too long ago, I posed a general question to my viewers under the community tab of my YouTube channel, asking if they can recall their grandparents informing them that there's Indian in their family. Over the course of 24 hours, this poll gathered a whopping 15,000 votes. And it was at this moment I knew that I needed to bring this to everyone else's attention. But before I continue on about this post, I think that it's best that we start with defining some of these prominent words that I will be utilizing here. Because nowadays, people are classifying the meanings of particular words based on their own perspectives, without knowing the etymology, or rather the history of the words they choose to speak. For example, before the production of dictionaries came into fruition, there were encyclopedias that also included a section which was formatted like a dictionary. But then the year 1828 saw the publishing of the first English language dictionary by author Noah Webster. In this dictionary, the term American is defined as, quote, a native of America, originally applied to the Aboriginals, or copper-colored races, found here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. So, from this definition alone, we can determine that the copper-colored Aboriginal races that were seen by the immigrating Europeans were once referred to as Americans, but their identities were somehow changed, unwillingly, to the point where Europeans, along with their offsprings, eventually included themselves unmolested as being Native Americans. During this same time period, the word Indian was also used, in which the 1828 Webster's English Language Dictionary defines the noun Indian as, quote, a general name of any native of the Indies, as in East Indian or West Indian. It is particularly applied to any native of the American continent. This means that prior to any European colonization and religious influence, all of the Aboriginal inhabitants of the American continent, or what we call Turtle Island, were originally referred to as Indians by the immigrating Europeans. And this also means that the term Indian itself was never strictly used to describe natives of the landmass now called India by followers of Western European indoctrinating social engineering. The term Aboriginal also carried a very essential meaning during this time period of 1828. It was defined as, quote, an original or primitive inhabitant. The first settlers in a country are called Aboriginals, as the Celts in Europe and Indians in America, end quote. And just in case you were wondering, the word Aboriginal derives from the Latin word Aborigine, and Malcolm X himself explains this word's definition quite accurately.
Aborigine, which means what? Black folks. You never find a white Aborigine. Rather, Aborigines are called natives, or they're always dark-skinned people. You and I are Aborigines, but you don't like to be called an Aborigine. You want to be called an American. Aborigine actually means from the beginning. It's two Latin words, ab meaning from, origine meaning the beginning.
Now, I want you to keep in mind that all of these terms are referring to the original inhabitants of this continent, and not from some other continent, which should make you question the stories of strangers somehow capturing defenseless Africans and then dragging them by the millions across the Atlantic to be forcefully cast as slaves or indentured servants in a totally different continent, not inhabited by either party during that time period. How many Europeans did it actually take to gain control over millions of Indians in America while simultaneously controlling millions of Africans in Africa as prisoners of war? Can you recall any American history dialect that informs you of a great war that took place in Africa that led to the captivity of millions of Africans who were then forcefully migrated to the Americas? Challenge your history teachers or college professors with these types of questions and see what they have to say about it. Now, Hundreds of comments under the post that I was referring to earlier exposes just how deep the rabbit hole goes when it comes to our stolen history. One of them stated, quote, "Nobody in my family ever spoke of Africa, only Indian tribes. My friends and neighbors did too, Blackfoot, Choctaw, Creek, etc. I only heard of African as it relates to copper people in elementary school. I remember hating history because none of it sounded right. I would get upset, kick a chair, cry, and refuse to do the work. I was so little I didn't even know why. Just knew my spirit felt convicted and things weren't adding up." On to another comment, which says, quote, "I don't socialize with my family as much as I probably ought, but the last time I did, I was telling my mom about all of this information I was getting about the indigenous people of America being black, and that a lot of us didn't arrive here from Africa. That's when she told me her great-grandmother always said, 'We are Blackfoot. I don't know nothing about no Africa.' That wasn't really so surprising to me, but it was comforting to know at least someone passed that history along verbally. What was mind-boggling was she showed me a deed where my family at one time owned 2,000 acres of land. We know who the land went to, what was done with the land afterward. A whole damn airport was developed on that land. What I'm gonna find out is how she went from 2,000 acres to 1 acre in a 1-bedroom shack." The next one says, "I was very fortunate to actually have met and known 4 of my great-grandparents growing up. My mama was a Blackfoot from South Carolina. My grandma Pauline was Cherokee from Barber, North Carolina. My auntie also has a census that shows our family history. She even has pictures and documents proving that my great-great-grandfather was a chief, dressed in his attire." And another one says, "As long as I can remember, Beulah, nicknamed Beautiful, also known as Grandma, told me my mama was a full-blooded Cherokee. She would go on, her hair was long and black all the way down to her back. My granny told me this until she transitioned after 90 strong years. At 67 years in this existence, this is one of my strongest memories about Beautiful. Why would she lie about that? Grandma looked like the mother that she described. Her hair was long and braided into 2 ponytails on each side that ran down the side of her red bone face. She was a petite, completely no-nonsense woman that had everybody's respect. She loved to garden and dip Garrett snuff. You knew Grandma greeted those she loved with some kind of strike, a hug, and a smile. Yeah, Beautiful always talked about her mother." Another comment says, "I found my paternal great-grandfather's old World War I registration draft card online. Under the category race, he checked Negro and Indian citizen. My maternal grandfather mentioned his mother being black and Indian. He was a very dark man with kinky hair, but his sisters, my great aunts, were also extremely dark complexioned with long, straight, curly hair." Another one says, "My mother's mom and dad, which is my grandparents' parents, therefore my great-granddads, were Native American down here in Texas. So I tell everyone I'm a native of Texas. My people are still here, never moved anywhere. My grandparents were born Blackshaw Indians and died black. And when I tell people what type of Indian, people say they never heard of Blackshaw Indian because I guess we were a tribe that was never written in the books. But we also had pictures of them and my great-grandparents. I'm still called black." Finishing off with this one, which says, "My grandmother was a black Indian. I remember as a kid, I would stare at and touch her long black waist-length straight hair, and I would talk to her while looking at her high jutting cheekbones. When my mom would go get her and bring her to the house to visit, some of my friends in my neighborhood would ask me, 'Who was she?' And I would say, 'My grandmother.' They never did believe me because she was a Georgia Cherokee from top to bottom. I miss her dearly." Now, with all of that being said, we can easily determine that our people have been manipulated and indoctrinated as children with tons of misinformation, conceptual arts, compulsory education, and fictitious folklore, all of which have been officially labeled as American history by set groups of strangers pre-approved by the government, because only you and your family would know just who you really are. So, if there's Indian in your family, without a question, then what does that make you?
This means, in the case of an American Negro, born in that glittering republic, and in the moment you are born, since you don't know any better, every stick and stone and every face is white, and since you have not yet seen a mirror, you suppose that you are too. It comes as a great shock around the age of 5 or 6 or 7 to discover that the flag to which you have pledged allegiance, along with everybody else, has not pledged allegiance to you. It comes as a great shock to discover that Gary Cooper killing off the Indians when you were rooting for Gary Cooper, that the Indians were you, 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 that the Indians...
I'm just here to make you think.